Paul Cézanne was part of a movement called Post-Impressionism. This movement occurred around the late 1800s. Paul Cézanne was initially influenced by Impressionism, which was a movement headed up by Claude Monet, who painted paintings such as water lilies that you might have heard of before. These paintings were painted very, very quickly and just caught quick impression of a mood and atmosphere and light conditions existed in fleeting moments, so they were painted very fast. Post-Impressionism started to slow painting process down again a little bit, and marks were much more considered and lower. Cézanne would often take ages in stroke. He often painted with a palette knife, which the painting here has been done with. But in the same way, as you've been using your brushstrokes in a very careful, considered way, you would do the same thing with his palette knives, considering all the directions that the strokes were moving, the marks were making in his painting. Cézanne was considered by many to be the father of modern art. He used a lot of tonal value in the same way that you've been doing to create a much more solid, realistic form than would be the case in Impressionism. Paul Cézanne used a tonal value scale. It's very similar to what you've been using. I've shown this just at the bottom of the slide here. Moves all the way from a very, very bright yellow, come right forward in the painting, the front of those pairs, all the way down through at least 5 tonal values. We're very, very darkest on the right hand side there. Just quite almost like a bluey brown colour that just falls into all the shadow areas of the pair. This technique of creating a lot of colour value later influenced the movement of Fauvism that did a very similar thing, but in a much more abstract way, and then later even Cubism, through an even more abstract technique through artists such as Picasso. So the whole thing started really with Paul Cézanne, who influenced all these later movements of art. And it all came through the use of block tonal value to were used to create this solid, realistic form. For this week's lesson, you're going to need all the things I've given you in your pack. You're going to need your paper, extra strips, your paintbrushes, your paints. If you can get them set up for me on a little plate. You're going to need a pot of water to clean off your brushes, and you're going to need some paper towel just to dry off your brush as you go. This week, we're going to build on all the skills we were learning last week and translating them into colour. We're going to learn again to observe really closely and record subject matter, which is in this case your tomato. We're going to use tonal values to suggest realistic form. Last week, we were concentrating on just tone, which is black and white. This week, we're looking at colour values to do the same thing. To be successful in this lesson, we're going to clearly really accurately record shapes and forms from observation. So we're going to be thinking really carefully about all of these contour shapes that represent the different colour values in this photograph. And we're going to be thinking about the fact they don't just stop on the edge of the object. We're going to create the illusion of realistic organic form by using carefully placed brush strokes that follow the curve of the tomato. And we're going to be using a full range of 5 tonal values, ranging all the way from your darkest value right down to your lightest. To start off, give your paints a really good clean. Now your paints are clean, you want to start sketching out your tomato. Remember, you're looking really, really carefully at your photograph for every single one of the little ridges are on top of the tomato, and blend for all the shapes and curves into it. So I'm going to draw that out first. Some of my outlines are really quite dark. I've done them that way at the moment just to demonstrate this to you. But before I start painting, I'm just going to go over them with a rubber to lighten them down so they don't shine through the paint. I'm going to start off by mixing my absolute darkest colour values all right in that corner of the tomato. And those colour values don't just stop on the edge of the tomato, they fill that whole area that falls down onto the paper. I'm going to keep my tonal study that I did last week out for reference, just to give me a bit of help as I go. Now I'm going to use my broadest brush to start mixing my colours first. And my colour is really a very, very dark red type colour. So I'm going to mix onto my red block. I take some water, tap it at the side, just releasing the pigment from this colour block. And I'm going to keep going until I start getting bubbles. Now, as this is going to be far too light at the moment, I want to bring in my brown and my blue onto my red to make a much darker tonal value of that red. Now start bringing this into your red. And I'm going to use my probably smallest brush at the moment, so I'll have lots of control. I'm going to get some water on it, tap it off, and I'm going to take some of that colour that I've mixed. And before I apply it onto painting, I'm going to test it out. So I'm going to try it on one of these strips I've given you, and just how I can fill it. And I think I'm just about right there, maybe a little bit more blue and brown. I'm going to make sure I am following the curves of the tomato with my brush strokes. Don't try and stop too hard on the edge you've drawn. Allow it to very slightly just overlap. I'm now going to try and mix my next colour value. Again, I'm going to use these strips of card just to test out as I go. Now, I already had a colour going on in here, mix on my red, and I continued to work into that for a little bit to release more of the red pigment underneath and lighten it again a little. And I've got to just about the right colour here. Now I'm going to start mixing my third colour value, which is again a little bit more vague. I'm going to start bringing in my lightest value because I'm using brown paper, and that represents this value that's very close to it. So I'm going to come back to that later, and I'm going to bring in these lightest areas now. I'm going to start looking at my midtones for these areas around here. I'm now bringing in my last colour value, which is this kind of peachy colour, just runs around the edge of the tomato. There's a couple of other little bits where it falls in. Your final painting should give a really, really strong illusion of realistic organic form. You'll achieve that by using directional brushstrokes, pick up on curves of this tomato, and you want to create a really realistic form, making it look really, really 3D by using your full range of tonal values from your absolute darkest up to your lightest value.